Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Tampa Bay, Florida Relocation Guide. I am your host, Adam Hancock, once again. And today, like the title suggests, we're talking big cities. We're going apples comparisons with cities of similar size, similar amenities, similar attractions in the state of Florida. The interesting thing about the state of Florida is there's not a ton of them. There's a lot of cities, but not comparable sizes. And when it comes to larger metros, especially if you're exiting from like a Chicago, Illinois, or many parts of New York and New Jersey and these urban atmospheres, then a lot of you aren't seeking the tiny little beach towns necessarily. So I want to talk about that today, and it's really a Tampa versus Miami versus Jacksonville surrounding conversation in my vantage point. So I hope you enjoy this take. And I'm going to make the argument of why maybe Tampa Bay is the best mousetrap. If you haven't already grabbed my digital guide to Tampa Bay 2024, it's completely free. It's on the website. We also have a Sarasota. We have a Naples. We have a New Home Specific. Make sure you get your hands on that. It's completely free. Just trade you for an email address. And that is it. We will hop into the video, and I hope you enjoy. All right. The first one, I'm kicking it off with something I'm calling not too big. You know, the thing with a larger metro that is a pro is that they get the cool stuff first. In order for a developer to have confidence to say, I'm going to put in this new eclectic restaurant, this place from like New York inspired, I'm bringing to Tampa or to Miami, theme parks, these large open air malls, they have to go to a populace that can support that and that they believe will also stand the test of time and won't dry up at a later point because the town's not based around people migrating there in large waves, right? And there's only a few places that I've already mentioned on this list that can support that kind of thing. If they're coming to Florida, it's going to 3 or 4 places first. Well, the problem with that at the same time is all the things that make developers attracted to it, foot traffic, the drive traffic, just the number of people in general, a lot of times can be overwhelming. And what Tampa does well is I think it strikes a balance. I think that it has all the things you'd want, but they're accessible. What's the point of having cool stuff if you feel like it's overwhelming and not accessible to you, or it's at a premium and you're always in lines and the traffic's out of control? You know, the sporting events, the separate districts, Ybor City, South Tampa, downtown, the Riverwalk, downtown St. Pete, all of that is a refreshing reprieve from the Bostons of the world and from the Washington, D.C.s of the world. And if you have anything of that perspective and you come to Tampa, people from Florida like me feel like Tampa's big. But coming from most metros that migrate there, even Atlanta, Georgia, it feels like a breath of fresh air. That's my number one. I think it's got everything you need, but in a way that you and your family can enjoy. Number 2 is a geography play, and that's central proximity. I've talked about this a lot on my various YouTube channels, but the idea of what Southwest Florida provides to the state, if you had to move to one place, if you had to pick one, Florida has a lot of cool things. I'm talking about a homestead. I'm going to sit here. It's not that I don't want to enjoy the stuff, the other cities that Florida surrounds, but I need to sit in one as my home base and then explore them. If you had to make that choice, Tampa to me is a clear winner in a large metro conversation because Tampa sits in the central proximity to everything but the Panhandle. So where you sit, you're 2 hours from Orlando, you're an hour from Sarasota, you're 2.5 to Naples, you're 3.5 to like Miami, Boca Raton, West Palm Beach. You know, there's nothing really above Tampa, but everything that's fun about Florida exists on this side to the east and to the southeast. Now, if you take Miami and Jacksonville, as lovely as they are and as coastal as they are, to me, beyond like the water differences and all that of the Atlantic and all that kind of stuff, is their own fringes. You know, Miami is very, very far south. I mean, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, that whole metro, right? It crosses over to the other side of the east side of the state, but it's as far as south as you can go, right? Has easy access to the Keys, but beyond that, everything else is coming up and over. Jacksonville is the same thing in a different direction. Jacksonville is damn near in Georgia, so they all have their perks. But if you said central proximity was the number one weighted factor on a formula, then I think it's hard to argue with Tampa for large cities and with Sarasota for small. Okay, number 3 is diversity of housing options, and what I mean by that is if you are trying to compare and contrast these things, let's set aside cost for a moment. Then variety of housing is very important, not just for leverage as a buyer. Like when you're seeking, like a buyer having more options is always good as far as just a supply and demand relationship when it comes to leverage, but just choices stylistically. You know, Tampa, because of the shape and the orientation of it, it has something truly for everyone, whether you're renting or buying. Because what you have is you have a 3-county conversation. The vastness of the land, It's not the biggest place in the world, but it's big enough to provide what I'm about to describe, because you have an inland portion called Hillsborough County. That's what everybody thinks about when they think of Tampa. It's Hillsborough County. It's where MacDill Air Force Base is. It's where the airport is, downtown Tampa, etc. But then you have a whole like built-in mini Sarasota called Pinellas County, and that's your coastal land, right? Like you have this whole other side. All the beaches in Tampa Bay are technically in Pinellas County. St. Pete Beach, Clearwater, Dunedin, Paso Grill, Fort DeSoto, all of that's in Pinellas County. So that's your coastal section, right? The one sits here, Hillsborough's over here. And then if you go north on both of those conversations, you go north enough, all the way east to west, it crosses to Pasco County. So what you have is you have land, you have coastal proximity, and if you go west, you're not directly in the water necessarily. So it provides a couple key items. One is when it comes to suburbs. If you're in Sarasota or Naples, when you go west, it hits water. The downtowns are also sitting on the coast. So west is basically out because that's the barrier islands. That's where everybody wanted to be. That's historic housing because it's been there forever. If you want suburbs, you got to go basically just east for the most part. Well, with Tampa, if you're in Hillsborough County, you can go north, west, east, and southeast and still have suburbs that change. Maybe you seek a commute to town that's shorter. Maybe you seek new construction abundance. Maybe you want to go west, not be in St. Pete, and want to be 20 minutes from Clearwater Beach and from downtown Tampa. That's what it provides there. And when you're moving with a family, a lot of people are seeking new construction abundance, future development. They like the towns to look suburban, the crystal water lagoons, all that kind of thing. Well, Tampa, you have 4 options, and you can satiate most of the needs there. Well, what if you're someone that either values the work commute at the utmost, or you don't want to be in Pleasantville? You like the urban-based housing, the historic-based bungalows and the walkability and all that kind of thing. Well, Tampa, again, has a bunch of options. So, you don't just have one district like downtown Sarasota or downtown Naples to satiate that need. In Tampa, you could go to the bougiest part, and you can go to South Tampa. Then you have historic Hyde Park, absolutely lovely. It sits right along Bayshore Boulevard, the longest continuous sidewalk in the United States. It's historic, but it's very mature. So a lot of people have already done the work, renovated the homes. You have a walkable Hyde Park Village, which is a 6-block walking district. That is absolutely lovely. Palma Ceia West sits right next to it. Similar, even more exclusive than that. 8 homes turned over in the last 6 months. It has a golf and country club. I'm rambling here, but this video is not about this. You have Beach Park, another one. It's like a throwback to old Florida. These sit right in a row next to each other, and then you're like, all right, I get it. But either I'm a little younger and I'm not really, that's not my stage yet, or how can I have that, what I just described there, but maybe a little cheaper? Well, you can just simply go slightly north. You have Riverside Heights, which sits along the Hillsborough River District, right? Another body of water. You have Seminole Heights, Tampa Heights, all of that right there, right? And then you could say, well, okay, I'm a St. Pete person, not a Tampa person, and I want to do what I just described there. Well, then you have the whole part that exists above downtown St. Pete. You have Old Northeast, Woodlawn, St. Paul, Euclid. You can go on and on and on. That's not to mention luxury condominiums, all that kind of thing. And the reason that I describe that so much is because you can't do that in most cities in the state of Florida. A lot of people, what I find is they struggle is they want to go somewhere, and their criteria of their home makes them make sacrifices that they were uncomfortable with making. It's a big sacrifice, right? Well, Tampa allows you to kind of get almost everything. It allows you to, if you're centered on schools at the utmost of importance, you can probably find a house that fits not just your budget, but also your style. And if you want new construction, there's 1,200 plus developments in the state of Florida. Most of them sit in the Sarasota, Naples, Tampa area. And Orlando's the other one that kind of comes into play there. But anyway, I'll digress this one. Just wanted to mention, I wanted to drive home, if that wasn't enough for you, of the diversity of housing. It is something that is not relevant till you really get deep in your search. But to say that you're going to move to Tampa and not be able to find something that works for you, whether you're renting or buying, I'd be surprised. Okay, the fourth one on my list, I want to talk about cost. And just like kind of numbers-wise to kick this off, Jacksonville wins out this conversation. If you're starting at 100 percentage points as the flat line, Jacksonville sits about 5 percentage points below the national average in overall cost, including housing and grocery and all the things that go into those economics. Tampa sits slightly above, they're about 3 points higher than the national average, and then Miami is your real outlier in the 20 percentage plus points of, it's one of the, not just the most costly in Florida, but it's one of the most costly overall. Now, the way to look at it, in my opinion, is where do you weigh cost in the equation? If you're doing a weighted formula and you have these 5 factors, where does it weigh? Because in my experience, when even people are looking up cheapest or affordability, they're not going to go to the most affordable. They're going to they're looking any metro already, so they have a ceiling. I want to go to Tampa Bay. They're not even looking at Southwest Florida. They're picking one metro and then saying, my criteria within this metro, does it work in a way that I'm okay with, or is that a deal breaker? And they're not typically cool with going to a completely different metro if that didn't work. It's kind of like starting over. And, one, I think Tampa, there's 2 things I like about Tampa in this conversation. One is that it's pretty moderate overall. Just the average cost versus similar Southwest Florida conversations, it's pretty moderate. You'd have to get pretty out of whack where the average price is $1 million. Secondly is, regardless of where you're looking in Tampa for the most part, I could name 2, 3, 4 junior options of doing that that are really, really close. And that's not necessarily... So the junior versions in Tampa, I personally like a lot better than maybe the junior versions in South Florida or in Northeast Florida, like Jacksonville. And what I mean by that is so I'd mentioned a bunch of districts in that rambly Section 3. Well, say you want to do that historic urban housing, right? In Hyde Park, Palm Sea West, whatever. By simply going north, 2, 3 miles above, 4 miles above, that's Seminole Heights, Tampa Heights, and that conversation, it's a mirror. It's just stuff that evolved a little later, but it's far, far cheaper. If if you're in Tampa because of MacDill Air Force Base, and it's very expensive to live around it, well, you could go over to Brandon and Lithia and Fishhawk and Valrico and save tons of money. If Brandon, that suburb that you went over to because it's not that far from downtown and all that kind of thing, if that's a little expensive for you, you can go south of that. Junior version of Brandon and Riverview is Apollo Beach, Wamama, Ruskin. Same goes for, you could go on and on and on, right? If you go to the north suburb, Wesley Chapel, it's the hottest one in town right now. It's the newest. It looks like it does online. It's lovely. Well, Wesley Chapel, Tampa Palms, Lutz offer a similar kind of vibe. It's 25 miles above town, but it's kind of like got all the new construction, all that kind of thing. Well, if you're a little priced out of that, you can go to Land O'Lakes, you can go to Zephyr Hills. It's right there. If you like Dunedin on the coastal St. Pete side, right above that, you have Palm Harbor, you have Newport Richey. It's the same kind of conversation. If you love Old Northeast in St. Pete, and Woodlawn and historic Kenwood, there's junior versions of that slightly above it. So what I love about that is that you could love an area. You could fall in love with an area and get romantic about it. And, a lot of people in Sarasota that happens to. And when plan A doesn't work, i.e. 2020's real estate market to now, then there's no plan B. And there's definitely not a plan C. And I feel like Tampa maybe offers a plan F. So that's what I'd say about cost. Okay, and my 5th and final one, just to put kind of a bow on this whole conversation, is I'm calling the most Florida. I think when you look at relocating to Florida, and you're seeking all the things that Florida is known for, right? I mean, beyond no state income tax and all that kind of thing. Coastal proximity matters. You want Florida stuff, right? You're looking, I might have a family. I might want some nightlife. I, of course, want the weather. I want the water. You want all that kind of thing. Some of the other big cities really win out real hard as number one in certain categories. Like Miami probably wins in several categories because of its scale. It's a mini Manhattan, right? But like when it comes to work and startups and all that kind of thing, Miami's in the conversation. Nightlife, 100% Miami's in the conversation. Jacksonville has a cost element to it. It has a location element to it. And it's very historic, almost like a northern beach vibe up in that way. St. Augustine's below it, and it's a different thing. Orlando, really wins out when it comes to families. It has a cost element too, but it's central. It's a couple, it's a bit far from the coast. Well, I think Tampa's the blend. Tampa's your blend. If you ask a bunch of people, you're like, this is good for this. I grab a little bit of this. I'm making a witch's brew. A little bit of this one, a little bit of this one, a little bit of this one. And you combine them and you had to pick one conversation of the best mousetrap, which is this conversation. I like Tampa for a blend. I'm not someone that wants to sacrifice. I don't like anything enough to go that hard in a direction and not get tired of it later. So I'd be looking for a happy medium. Sarasota is a happy medium when it comes to a play first, work second culture. But if I needed a little bit bigger of a metro, Tampa wins out in that conversation for me if I had to pick one. So that is what I'd say about that. All right, my friends, that is a wrap for my stream of consciousness ramble on an argument for, is Tampa Bay the best big city in the state of Florida? I hope you enjoyed this take. If you're enjoying the content so far, please consider subscribing. We're going to get more and more in depth once I get through some of the more macro content here. If you haven't grabbed the digital guide, get your hands on that. And of course, if you are looking to buy, sell, and/or invest in the entire state of Florida, we have a full-scale real estate brokerage that I own called the Sunshine State Company. We have a really unique team. We spend a lot of time researching. We matchmake an agent that really makes sense to your lifestyle. You kind of get the whole team. So it's unique to real estate in general. We do a lot of relocation, a lot of new construction. So we really made an art form about kind of what do you need to know, how much do you need to spend with us, what do you need to do independently. So if any of that sounds slightly alluring, then you can call, text, email, anything you want to do. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video, and we'll see you on the next one.